Hello, fellows. This is Weitong, and my topic is buying supermajorities. As we have learned before, the minimum winning coalitions are cheaper to build than supermajority coalitions. If a coalition builder must pay for each member added to the coalition, then she should never pay more than the smallest number required to win. So minimum winning coalitions have appeared either as a key prediction nor an essential assumption of almost formal models for coalition formation and vote buying. But there are some contradictions to this theory. As an empirical matter, oversized coalitions seem to be at least as prevalent as minimum winning coalition. Divisions and legislative roll calls are seldom near to 50-50, and more refined searches for minimum winning tendencies typically fail as well. So for example, the effectiveness of majority party appear to be strictly increasing with the party size increase, even it is much larger than the minimum winning. And the defections do not increase as the majority party increase in size. Moreover, in the context of the parliamentary coalition government formation, non-minimum winning coalition frequently form. And there are some explanation to this situation. First is uncertainty. If there is some chances that legislators who renege their permits, then the vote buyers will typically increase their majorities and aim for an expected victory margin of more than one vote. And second is the legislative norm of universalism. Legislators might prefer to support all distributive projects proposed each session, rather than live in the environment in which new minimum winning coalitions formed each session and pass only their own projects. And third is the ideological diversity, so which sometimes lead to the minimal connected winning coalition might be larger than the minimal winning coalition. And the fourth, which is the new reasoning in this paper, it tells us that non-minimum winning coalitions may actually be much cheaper than minimum winning coalitions. And I will use the models and example in this paper to make this explanation. And there are two policies, status quo and new policies. And there are two vote buyers, A and B. A prefer X over S, and B has the opposite preference. For each legislator, we let V equal to UX minus US denote the intensity of this legislator's preference for voting X over S. And let A denote A's offer and B denotes B's offer, and W sub A be A's willingness to pay for X, and W sub B be B's willingness to pay for S. So there are some assumptions of this model. First, there are two competing vote buyers instead of one. If there is only one vote buyers, then the minimal coalition exists. And second is vote buyers move sequentially. If vote buyers were to move simultaneously, then the pure strategy equilibria typically would not exist. Third, a legislature is decided by majority rule, for all actors become informed bribes once they are offered. The five, each voter buyers wants to minimize their total bribe paid, but each would prefer to concede if he has to pay more than his willingness to pay. And the sixth, all indifferent unbribed legislators vote for as a status quo, and all indifferent bribed legislators vote for the outcomes preferred by the vote who bribes them last. And seven, A and B cannot collude. And we will use this model to find out the sub-game perfect pure strategy Nash equilibrium in this game. And I will use the example to tell that. So first, we assume that legislature contains 7 members, and we let n plus 4 be the size of coalition. If m equals 0, which means that A's coalition member is 4, then B can defeat X by paying A plus epsilon to one member of A's coalition. Thus, A must set A greater or equal than W sub B to win, and A's total bribes are then 4 times W sub B. And if m equals 1, B can defeat X by paying A plus epsilon to 2 members of A's coalition, and A must set A greater or equal than W sub B over 2 to win, and his total bribes is 5 times W sub B over 2. And after the calculation, we can draw that it should be clear that A can minimize his total payments by bribing all 7 legislators. and hence his total bribes are 7 times W sub B over 4. So we can find out two equilibrium in this game. When W sub A greater or equal to 7 times W sub B over 4, X wins by A bribing all 7 legislators. But if W sub A less than 7 times W sub B over 4, then as the status quo will remain win and no bribes are paid. And this example is easily to generalize the any size of n. And it should be noting that for large n, A's total payments almost equal to 2 times W sub B. And if B and A can collude, A could offer B an amount of W sub B plus epsilon in exchange for B's promise not to compete in the buying votes. And similarly, we use a specific number to find out the optimal strategy in example 2. And after calculation, we can draw the conclusion that the optimal strategy for A is to bribe 6 of the 7 legislators. So this strategy is neither a minimal winning nor a unanimous coalition. So what can we learn from the two examples? First, although this model assumes only 2 periods of vote buying, it is easily generalized to any finite number of periods, as long as the 2 vote buyers still alternate in making bribes. Second, if the game takes place, the vote buyers preferring the status quo necessarily move the last. Third, the model would change very little, however, if the legislators were given the preference over outcomes. The reason is that such preference only matter if the legislator is pivotal. Otherwise, the legislator's voting strategy depends only on the position taken consideration. Thus, whenever a vote buyer buys at least one more than she need to win, then all legislators become non-pivotal and outcome-based preference disappear. So fourth, it may be more natural to treat the bribes as if they are benefits right into the bill rather than a simple cash transfer. So how do we understand this one? The main effect of such a change is that the legislators would no longer be indifferent about the bribes received by his colleagues, and the bribes would produce externalities. For instance, suppose the bribes are projects right into the bill, and these projects are funded by the general tax system, so that every dollar in the bribes means one more dollars in tax spread evenly among the legislators. Then the legislators would just strictly prefer their colleagues receive fewer bribes. Also, given the fixed set of bribes, each legislator preference for the bill shifts downward by amount she must pay in increased tax. And there are some concerns about these models. First is a consideration of all alternative forms of agreement between the vote buyers and legislators. For example, a vote buyers may pay some legislators, but this legislator would vote for them only if their vote is needed to pass the bill. And second, the outcomes when bribes must be written into the bill being considered by the legislature rather than the paid out cash. As we discussed above, this could cause the legislators to care not only about their own bribes, but also care about the bribes received by their colleagues. And third is the endogenized bill selection, where a player strategically chooses a bill. So this means that the willingness to pay for each vote buyers and the reservation price of legislators would then depend on the bill chosen. And how can we solve the situation with a different preference of legislators and the problems of collusions between the vote buyers? So I don't think this paper have solved these concerns or questions, and there need to be some further discussion and research about this problem. And I would say that also there are some more general results discussed in this paper and the introduction of the leveling strategy. But I will not go further discussing it because of time limit. And if you have any interest or questions about this topic, feel free to contact with me and we can have a discussion about this one. And thank you for watching.